Hearing none, we'll move to the next request item on the agenda. Funding request. We have Ian Simonetti, Gary Myers, and also Hampton Township Commissioner Nate Silver. Welcome.
Thank you.
You guys want to sit up here? Commissioners, thank you very much for having us here today. It's greatly appreciated. I'm Nate Silcox, President of Capital Region Council of Governments. With me on my left here is Ian Simonetti, our retiring Executive Director, and our incoming Executive Director, Gary Myers. So this transition is taking place here come January 1st. So we appreciate the time today. Our simple ask here today is to request funding, Cumberland County's funding for whether it's $5,000 or $10,000 or somewhere in between, funding for a regional fire coordinator, fire and EMS coordinator position. And we're looking for Cumberland County, Dauphin County, and York County, which are our three core counties that make up the Capital Region COG. The COG, for those that aren't aware, consists of 40 municipalities within Cumberland, Dauphin, and York. Membership is also open up to Lancaster, Lebanon, and Perry County as well. But for the purposes of this, we're looking for the three main counties, Cumberland, Dauphin, and York, to see whether you're interested in being a partner on this position for fire and EMS coordinator. Simply put, the fire and EMS industry is having some severe issues across the Commonwealth and across the nation, and as well as in central Pennsylvania. Just yesterday, Hampton Township, our main primary daytime driver, is going to have to retire, effective immediately from the fire service. So he's going to stay on as our president, but due to some health issues, he's going to have to retire. And so we're now faced with a decision to make in terms of drivers, and whether we might have to pay part-time drivers. Other municipalities are dealing with a fire tax. Other municipalities, are looking at consolidating. So that, we went from 300,000 volunteer firefighters in the 1970s, and now we're down to 50,000 in Pennsylvania. And so we're facing that issue across the Commonwealth and across the nation, like I said. The Capital Region COG has focused on this issue since my presidency began a year ago. And we've had several presenters. We had the State Fire Commissioner in. We had Don Conk, who heads the Fire and Emergency Services Institute. We also have Rob Brady, who is with the Governor's Center for Local Government Services. And we've also had one of our own Hampton Township firefighters, Jerry Ozog, who's involved in strategic planning. And then those four gentlemen also led us on a panel discussion in August where we had 60 municipal officials as well as fire and EMS personnel. We sat down, we had a discussion, and nobody in that room voiced any opposition to working together. And our whole goal in that meeting was to, what can the COG do? What can the Capital Region COG do on this issue? And it wasn't that they were opposed to any types of cooperation, but they wanted to see it, and they wanted to see it done, something done. And so we've come up with this idea of having a part-time position here, which would serve on addressing right off the bat some of the basic issues, coming up with a common application for our fire companies. So whether you're applying in Hampton, East Pennsburg, Silver Spring, you have one application. That way you're not filling out several different applications to become a volunteer firefighter. That would be pretty simple on that front. There's been efforts on that in the past. We think this is something that could be achievable. We also, the COG has been involved in saving municipalities money through joint purchasing. So we think, if there's some areas that we can save funding on municipalities with fire equipment, this position is the way to do that. We're also looking at grant funding. And, through the conversation with Commissioner Hersler, thank you for your continued involvement with the COG. This position can certainly highlight and help municipalities with grant funding. So that's an important component as well. So we believe that this position, can start off part-time. If we get the funding from the three counties, that would be wonderful. If we have to go to a fallback plan, we'll do that. But we first want to see whether you as counties would be amenable to this request. And we're looking forward to starting off and addressing these issues, but certainly it's broader in terms of where this position can go in terms of addressing fire and EMS needs regionally. But ultimately, we're saving municipalities' funding, we're saving the region funding, But ultimately, we're addressing the issue here of volunteer firefighters and EMS here in central Pennsylvania. Gary or Ann, you want to add anything?
One of the things that I noticed at the forum that was held back in August was a common frustration of the first responders and the firefighters present. They're well-trained men and women that go out and save lives and protect property, but they've been bestowed without their wishes a lot of administrative duties that they didn't have to do in the past. The required and necessary background investigations. This emergency coordinator could handle the background investigations. When you look at volunteer fire companies, you're going to see different levels of training. We would like to establish a minimum training qualification, which the state does not have at this time for a volunteer firefighter. We'd like to establish that through this emergency coordinator. One of the things we'd also like to do, and again, I would give Commissioner Hertzler credit for this, is to come up with an emergency services advisory council, advisory board that would consult with this person we're going to hire to see what we really should be doing, where the focus really should be, whether there's consolidations out there that could take place, saving millions of dollars in taxpayer money. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to model our position after others that have been created in the state. Next Tuesday, I'm going to go with Rob Brady from DCED and Sean Sanderson from DCED to State College to see how their setup works, so we can steal from them, so we can plagiarize from them to use what's already working. And in doing that, the ultimate goal is to continue to save lives, to protect property, and to save taxpayers' dollars. We feel that we can do that by establishing recruitment and retention criteria for the volunteer fire companies. One of the things that Nate just mentioned is the possibility of going to part-time or full-time paid drivers. And what I've noticed historically is split houses don't exist. Once you start paying one person, there's going to be just the human nature to develop the jealousy that everybody was paid. The volunteer fire companies in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania have a long and distinguished heritage. We want to continue that as long as we can, not only for the camaraderie, but just to, again, save taxpayers' dollars. And the same request that we made to the Cumberland County Commissioners, Nate has made that same request to the Dauphin County Commissioners, and we're coordinating that through the York County Commissioners also. So we're here to request any and all help you're willing to give us.
Before we continue, I just want to make an announcement I should have made earlier. Commissioner Eichelberger obviously is not here today. He has a planned time off, so I just wanted to mention that. Okay, Jim, you want to start with any questions?
And did you have anything?
The three things that we heard loud and clear at the forum were manpower and funding and administrative assistance. And so by putting together a single application, I'm hoping that that will be helpful in getting new recruits. And then once we have our new recruits, then of course we'll be working on retention as well. But just as Commissioner Silcox said, the number of volunteer firefighters that we had years ago has dropped alarmingly. Pun intended.
Right, we're certainly in a crisis mode here, statewide, and we want to address this proactively, and ultimately, if we can address this through an administrative position such as this, that way it keeps the firefighters doing what they do best, the volunteers, responding to emergencies rather than having to deal with the paperwork. And if we can, addressing these paperwork issues, whether it's the common application, whether it's the background checks, whether it's, a joint purchasing grant administration, or applying for grants, we think this would be a wonderful position.
Well, as some of you know, this is an issue that's been near and dear to my heart for a long time. When I was township commissioner, served on the West Shore Council of Governments, we tried to move forward with initiatives to promote recruitment and retention of volunteers. This has been a challenge for quite some time. I was honored to serve as a member of the Senate Resolution 60 Commission representing the first-class townships in Pennsylvania. And there were a number of good recommendations that came out of that study, and some of them have been implemented, some of them have not been implemented. But it all goes back to, this issue of manpower. And we are so blessed to still have folks who dedicate 24/7, 7 days a week, to respond to every imaginable emergency without asking for compensation. It's a critical public service that they perform, our volunteer firefighters. And and I look at this in terms of, and suggested that, we consider this request because we really are all in this together. So let me just, from this point, is this coordinator going to deal with the issue of recruitment and retention of volunteers, or is this more looking at developing
perhaps an education program that we could share with potential recruits.
Okay.
Yes.
And the sky's the limit on this position, but if it addresses those three core areas, common application, which, it can be, we believe achieved, fairly quickly, if everybody's working together, background checks, as needed, but certainly, address, coming out, whether helping with a campaign, a recruitment campaign, or, retention is a whole different issue, and, there's been recently, the state law just enacted that allows municipalities to provide tax credits, so hopefully, coupling with what the state's doing, and there is going to be another SR 60 commission, just watch out that you might be tapped for that again, dear commissioners, so, the sky's the limit for this position, in terms of administrative and as well as recruitment and retention.
One of the things you touched on, which I think is a good point, is this common application. That also has to do then with common criteria with respect to qualifications, which is going to take some discussion. And Gary's right. We don't really have any state requirement. I think you have to have hazmat, I'm pretty sure, and I'm not quite sure, but what happens a lot of times is our fire companies, and I don't blame them, they require extra amount of certification because they want to know that the people who are backing them up in a dangerous situation know what they're doing. It's a lot different than when I was a volunteer firefighter back when I was in my teens, and received very little training, and ended up riding on the back of a fire truck, and then actually did go into a burning building once with the air pack and everything. But times have changed, and there's a lot more safety precautions in place. And there's a definite need here. So you don't want to make the requirements so rigid that you turn folks off, or they don't want to participate, or they don't want to go through all the training. But you want to have some kind of common level of training that is sufficient of what to meet the needs in terms of responding to, like I said, every imaginable emergency. So I guess we don't know where Dauphin County is or York County is at this point.
I spoke with Dauphin County yesterday. They're very interested in finding out what Cumberland County has to say today. So, you're the test case here, and want to start off with some friendly faces here on this shore, and we'll certainly.
They'll probably want to go with Lebanon.
Yeah, little inside joke. The position you're thinking of, regional fire and EMS coordinator, I know you wrote down some things here, what they're going to do, et cetera, et cetera. How does that say, let's look at Hampton Fire Company or the two in Silver Spring, what would this person be doing differently than, say, the chief or assistant chief or their staff?
In terms of starting off, again, a common application is going to have to work with, each of the municipalities. And in terms of saying, I would expect that, they would collect each of those applications, from each of the municipalities, see if we can come up with a joint one, and then work with those, and then it's up, with a lot of what the COG does, it's voluntary. So if we can, but if, we build that momentum, if we work together, I'm fairly confident that we'll get the 40-member municipalities to ultimately agree to a common application. And so once you strike that off, you go to the background checks. And as now Hampton Township has an administrator that works with background checks, but this position can help, alleviate some of those items, and this, perhaps the administrator can go on some more calls. That would certainly be helpful for us.
So this would cover really the whole CapCog group. And sorry if this seems like such an elementary question, but if fire company A wanted to get, they need some recruits, they would go through this coordinator, they maybe have a bigger span of.
This position can certainly sit down with that municipality, talk to them about what their needs are. If they haven't had a campaign, so to speak, they can talk about how to go about that. If it's a capital region one, October is typically EMS, month. If, they can get them some additional material, brochures, signage, speakers, that position can certainly help out with something like that.
Right, and it would be our intent also to fill this position with an individual that has a background in firefighting. We want experience. We want somebody who can hit the ground running and experience work to make this work.
Years ago, well, wasn't that long ago, my township enacted that fire tax. I think a couple others have done so since, and were raised.
The township I came from, Susquehanna.
East Penn, I think. And the reason we did that, by the way, we had, based on our surveys and et cetera, there's about a 4-to-1 approval rate of our voters to enact that. But talking to the chiefs there, Chief McDonald and Chief Hall, the major reason they were getting recruits was because they had to spend most of their time barbecuing chickens, et cetera, et cetera. And when a new recruit would come in, seeing what they had to do, they wouldn't stay too long. Now, I know there's other reasons as well. But since that funding's been given to the fire companies, they've been able to get some better equipment, et cetera. We have renovated firehouse in Silver Spring. I don't know, I haven't looked at any of the recruitment numbers lately, whether it's changed or not, whether it's increasing. But part of the problem is funding. I know Silver Spring, we do not, at least I don't think we do have any paid firefighters, they're also volunteer. And it's really to our benefit to keep it that way. There's definitely pros and cons. Funding, one of the things you have listed here, how do you see that, this person assisting with funding?
We're going to talk about that.
Looking, searching for available grants,
Grants, yeah.
doing cooperative grant applications to the Commonwealth, or actually into the federal government. Once we've established this entity, the federal government is much more is more likely to give grants to consolidated entities other than single entities, because it's more bang for the buck, doing it that way. Just looking for what's available out there and doing things on a joint nature, and using the available funding, developing an inventory of equipment. Because not everybody needs a tower truck.
Correct.
If a tower truck can be used by multi-municipalities, because right now a tower truck's going for $1.1, $1.3 million.
It's crazy.
When I was a young manager back in Columbia Borough in 1984, we went out and I think the first piece of apparatus we bought was $85,000. That was a lot of money. And now you're looking at a minimum of $450,000 to $550,000 for equipment or something like that. So we're looking for this person in regards to funding, not only to find funding, but try to use the funding to get the most spending ability out of it, the most use out of the money. So a lot of fire companies have equipment that they see as obsolete, and another fire company can say, well, we could use that to develop that inventory. And again, this job is going to evolve. It really is, when it becomes real.
Yeah, that's all the questions I have for now. Do you have any more?
Yeah.
Larry, comments?
Chief weigh in here. I did want to ask, in terms of the 40 municipal members of CAPCOM, are they going to be invested in this as well? Or how do we see this, in terms of the expense for this position? Is this something that they're invested in as well, as opposed to?
Well, the investment in this, as it is with all CAPCOG programs, will be on a voluntary basis. Certainly not all 40 will participate. But I think what we're looking at for investment initially is, we do want the fire companies to have some skin in the game. It'll be a minimal, I'm thinking either a minimal charge, or again, that has to be decided by the board. We do know that there is great support for it, Commissioner, because last Monday evening at President Silcox's his November board meeting, they unanimously passed a resolution to be presented to DCD for funding. And I've had several discussions with DCD, and we're looking at $30,000 coming from them to set up the office. We can't pay people with that grant, but we can purchase the equipment. We can use it to do joint studies, to do joint needs assessments. So, this is not good.
Right, so you've got that funding from DCD as a real possibility. We're looking at the funding from the three counties as a start to this program, and then we'll approach our membership here as to where further goes from there. I mean, if it's a $15,000 a year position, if it's a $30,000 a year position, if membership declines against participating, well, then we've got to go back to the drawing board. That's with any of our programs here, Commissioner. But we think with the discussion that we had in August with the 60 municipal officials as well as fire officials, that there's a real interest in this. And as soon as we start seeing results, the buy-in will be in there.
Very good.
Excuse me. Just a couple of comments, and then I'd like to recognize our people from our public safety department. And then, God willing, if we could circle back and I can ask a business question after that. But since coming on board about 3.5 years ago, one of the things that we were dealing with through public safety is the state of our emergency services training academy. That's, if we had a case of beer and a bottle of whiskey, we could probably spend a good day talking about that. But in the course of that, it's been a real education to me in terms of just how disjointed the situation is in this county vis-a-vis our fire services. There are different organizations there's different organizations for the firefighters themselves, there's different organizations for the chiefs. There are municipalities, these fire departments don't talk to their other ones. Nobody wants to use the training center, but then everybody wants a better one. There are multiple county organizations that try to get all of these people together, and we've never had very much luck. I suspect that the reason, and I would tackle that with anybody who would get something as simple as a common application. I would give that person a medal, because believe me, the reason we don't have one now is because nobody wants to do anything other than the way that they want to. On that note, I'm going to stop and ask maybe Bob and Michelle, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I just, whatever we do, we certainly want it to be successful. I know we've certainly been around the block, time and time again, and tried to support anything that, the services have wanted to do. The volunteers, the amount of value they bring to the municipalities, is just unbelievable, and something that we need to try and sustain anything we can do. I know the Emergency Services Action Panel was created back in the early 2000s, I think 2004, 2005, to kind of bring together items and issues with the emergency services. And we hold that meeting, 3 times a year, collective group of the team leaders, emergency services, all the different agencies throughout the county, and recruitment retention was the initial item that brought that together in the early 2000s. We developed recruitment retention templates and had that all put together. There were billboards at one time, and then for whatever reason, once the templates developed, a lot of people didn't take advantage of the program for whatever reason. Or you would have the program, we could get recruits would come in and then see the fundraising responsibilities, and maybe people would shy away, or there was other things to do that were more attractive. So it's like, how do we think outside the box to make this round successful is where we keep mulling over, moving forward. So I don't know what the magic answer is. The bulk purchasing, we've seen to run that gamut multiple times, and then you might get different companies that don't like the same particular equipment. So, I mean, you guys have been in the emergency services, you know how that.
On the forms that we send out, for you to put down whatever type of pipes and valves and nozzles and all that kind of stuff, you can add on there your specific type
Sure.
that you want, And I did receive some specs just out of curiosity before we get started on that.
Mm-hmm. So and I'm sure it'll be much like the salt bid and
Absolutely.
the line painting.
Sure.
Double line, single line.
Right.
Well, single lines are a bad topic these days. So. Sorry about that.
What we did sense at that August 15th forum was there was frustration there. There was a real belief that the men and women there that evening want to see something happen. They don't want to have a meeting 2 years from now and say, here's what we did 2 years ago, and now make do it now. They want to see something happen, and this is what they want to see. And I think it's really worth the effort to try to make it happen. And that's where we have to rely on people such as yourself to advise us so we do it right. We want to do it right. We don't want to do it over. We want to do it correctly.
And I guess the other thing would be, can we expand it? I mean, is it available countywide versus CAPCOG only? I know we do extend for the Western COG members, the salt bid and some of that.
In what way do you mean extend it to the county, so that the county could also participate, are you saying?
The entire county.
So
all the
all the
Oh, I see what you're
municipalities
saying.
would be able to take advantage of the.
This position is going to have to start out smaller. I do see that the work's getting larger, and obviously if it gets large enough and enough responsibility, it's going to be more than a 15 to 20 hour week.
And it could certainly evolve to the point of working directly with Western COG or
We work at the Western COG now in many aspects.
Right, that's right, yes.
They are an associate member of ours, the Western Cumberland COG, so yeah, we'd be happy to work with them too. Absolutely. Good for them. We'd be interested in seeing your templates that you put together too.
Okay.
Michelle, any comment?
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed in us attempting to do some of these programs you spoke of, like Bob said, we attempted these several times ourselves with our local responders. One of the things that we find is we have to get the commitment from the fire department. We can offer them or any of the services in municipalities. They're a buy-in for it. They want to do it until it comes time to push the button for go, and then they all go back to their own respective corners. I do believe that the only way that we would really get a good buy-in of 50% or more to make this very valuable is we have to start at the municipal level. Some kind of an agreement of some form between municipality, fire departments, whatever, emergency services, that if this funding is provided on their behalf, that they will commit and participate within the programs that are going to be offered. I can't make that commitment on their behalf, and I would offer, maybe that is a topic to take back to municipalities, take back to Emergency Services Action Panel, perhaps the Chiefs Association or the EMS Council that meets on a regular basis. But I really think before we could say this is going to move forward in a positive fashion, we really need to make sure we have that written buy-in.
One of the things we heard at the forum that we put on was we need to start talking in we, not I.
Exactly.
And so if we can make that abundantly clear at the municipal level with what you're saying, then we have a much better chance of success.
Absolutely, because these types of programs are definitely needed. Unfortunately, as you get participants to participate actively, all of our hands are going to be tied. So I
And one of the
appreciate
goals-
your efforts and your support, because this is something that's needed.
One of the bullet points that we have in the original, in the draft job description is to attend meetings and participate in municipalities, fire companies, and fire chiefs as needed to inform and educate in regards to the purpose and program. And it's important to communicate. It's all about communication. People can, if you communicate, people will participate. And that's what we're really making.
We're going to wrap up here in a couple minutes, folks, but, yeah, I mean, to show your points of view, maybe at some point we get a memorandum of understanding, even someone had mentioned maybe a small fee, just to show, it doesn't have to be astronomical, but just something that says, yeah, we're interested in improving it. But it sounds, yes.
Of course not. We would ask this of anybody who came to the county asking for money. And it sounds like this would not be the first and only time. Chances are, talk about growing a position, and it's a natural tendency of any position to try and fill its plate to justify its existence. I don't mean that in a disparaging way. It's just the way it is. How would you measure success? What would be your metrics? Because if you came back to us next year and asked for one, how would we know if you've been successful? You can create a form, but you want an outcome out of that. I think what you're getting at is higher rates of recruitment and retention. So is that your metric? And what do you think you could actually accomplish within reason, so that if you came to us next year for continuing funding, we would know whether or not this was money well spent? No one is in any way casting dispersions on your intentions. They are as noble as they come. And as you've heard, there's been a lot of good people spending a lot of time trying to come up with a solution to this. So how would we know if you had been successful if you were to come back to us?
I think the first tangible benchmark would be the level of participation that we receive from the municipalities and the fire companies. That's something that you could quantify very easily.
No, I'm excited about this, the possibility of this position, what it can accomplish. Whether it can, be all end all in 1 year, obviously is going to be rather difficult in terms of year one. But in terms of, we can certainly quantify, the progress in terms of a joint application. Certainly, quantify how many background checks have been completed on that front. Grant funding's, a rather difficult proposition in order, it's easy to identify, it's harder to receive that, but in terms of assisting fire companies, you can certainly quantify how many grants, have been applied for, and in that aspect, certainly how many meetings have been attended. Those items can certainly be tracked and provided for the following year.
Just wanted to say, one of the things that I was thinking about earlier, and I didn't want to miss saying it, but one of the things that would be beneficial with this common application is, essentially, when someone is at work outside of their municipality, if that municipality was, say, membership, so that they could respond to calls, during the day when they're working, not just when they're home in the evening. It would help to deal with the daytime response. This again, it goes back to the standardization of the requirements, the training, and the common application. I think would help us certainly. The other thing is that, and I know this is the case in most of our fire departments, because we have a handful of people, right, who essentially are doing the management of the fire company. They're responding to calls. They're in a lot of cases maintaining the equipment and the facilities, and they're also doing fundraisers, okay? They don't have a lot of time left over for recruitment. And that's where, I think that, there's a definitive need. And, we've gone through with the COG effort and so forth, the mass media efforts to advertise, call 1-800-FIRE-LINE, follow up, volunteer. But I think it really comes down to person-to-person contact. And, you know, we have, you know, captive audiences in all of our school districts. And we know, you know, the students who may not be involved in every extracurricular activity under the sun, but who would be able to start off as a junior firefighter and assist at the local fire company and actually feel good about what they do in service to their community. And I think that's something that we need more of, you know, this day and age. It's not all about social media. It's not all about all this technology. But I think there's young people out there who would be, you know, proud to serve and also pick up the tradition, which has been a proud tradition of volunteerism. So having said all that, nobody has a magic wand. We've been down this road a number of times with, you know, different ideas of how we're going. One of the problems I see is the fact that we've lacked consistency, and maybe it's not comprehensive enough. But the reason why I say that we're all in this together is because we are. You know, I know, you know, our primary concern here as the county is looking out for the taxpayers with respect to the county property tax. Okay, but I also know that if we lose our volunteer fire companies, our taxpayers, whether they're county property taxpayers or school property taxpayers, they're going to see one of the largest increases in taxes that they've ever seen if we lose our volunteer fire companies, because our municipalities are going to face some significant, you know, tax increases to, you know, I mean, if you just compare it to what the cost is of our police departments in this county, you can probably double that very easily if we're going to be paying for fire protection too. So we know there's a need. The question is, how can we be most effective, you know, in addressing this as a collective, you know, community? And that's why I was very interested, and I appreciate the initiative. And I know the forum you had over at HAC. Unfortunately was not able to attend, but I did look at some of the articles on that and everything. You know, it's something we need to pursue together. I certainly would be interested if our county partners in York and Dauphin step up to the plate. I think Cumberland County should be part of it as well. That's my personal opinion.
Okay.
So that doesn't answer your question, though, right?
I appreciate that. One point if I can make, and we have our annual dinner at January 17th is the date, 16th, January 16th coming up. We will have HAC as well as Cumberland Valley's superintendent talk about their initiative, which I was happy to be part of, to announce the partnership that they have on recruitment and retention. I think, you know, programs like that and what we're doing, and as what we're doing at the state level, my daytime job here will certainly help in terms of addressing a lot of these issues here. And there's a lot of these partners that are right here in this central Pennsylvania community region here.
I hope you revisit the reinstitution of the state income tax credit for active volunteers. That wasn't given a long enough time to, you know, actually work, in the Department of Revenue made it very difficult, all right, for volunteers to take advantage of that. But, you know, one of the things that I've said a long time is that, okay, they don't get paid for what they do, but they sure as heck deserve a tax credit for the public service that they provide.
Right, we were very excited to get the municipal tax credit done, but obviously the state tax credit is a different.
Well, they'll work in tandem.
Right.
They can work in tandem, but anyway.
Gary, hey, Ann, do you have any final comments? We have to move on.
Well, just thank you for the time.
Appreciate your time,
Well,
absolutely.
Thank you for coming here, and this idea certainly has merit, and this board will certainly take it under consideration. And as we usually do, we make decisions relatively quickly, so really appreciate you being here.
Could I just want to add something, Vince. I want to take this opportunity to thank Ann Simonetti for her dedicated and loyal service to the region. I know member of Borough Council in Marysville, and enjoyed very much working with you, Ann.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Folks, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if have to skedaddle, no problem.
We'll get
Only
to
for
the next
other people.
one. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you.
See you.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your help. Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Appreciate that you-
Robert.
Good, Robert.
Make fun of you.
Get that area.
Is this hands?
Okay.
Yes.
All right, moving on to our next item, paperless solutions update.
Get up on the street first, sir. Sir, something quicker.
Thanks, Commissioners. Larry, I'll probably be moving around a little bit. With me, my first deputy, Aaron Ernst. Mike Kingston's president and founder of Paperless Solutions. And I didn't know how detailed, I emailed all this to you this morning, so you all have all this. And then I do have, if you wanted some of the data handouts, I do have those printed if you wanted. I didn't want to print all the slides and everything, so I'm kind of putting it into a presentation on paperless solutions. Have a ton of paper. So,
I'm sorry, Dave, I'm still kicking and screaming in the 21st century.
you know what? It's just a couple of our judges and some of our attorneys are as well, as much as I. So, and I didn't know whether there was other items on the agenda, so I'll spend as little or as much time as we need to on some of the things, but I'm going to kind of be expeditious. But please, if you have a stopping point you want to drill down, I'm happy to do that. Okay, so just briefly, what we're going to talk about, the pre-2010 area. What I was elected in 2009 and took office in 2010, so what I adopted when I came into office. What we went through to choose this particular system, I think it's important to know where we came from and why we chose the system we did. Also, some of the feature function benefits that the system's capable of doing. Some things we are utilizing, some things we haven't utilized yet, but we have that kind of capability. Also, some statistical information about e-filing to date and some financial information about what project costs and things like that, and also a little touch of the future of the system. So when I came in 2010, we didn't have any processes that were automated at all. It was basically a hand system. I looked for one of the things that is a great icon for our office when I came in 2010. It's anybody in accounting or banking may have seen it. It's a check writing machine, and basically it's this thing that weighs about 1,000 pounds, and it has little levers on it that you physically move the levers to enter the amount of the check, and then you pull this arm, and it's completely non-electric. Pull this arm, and it prints the sum and the word of the check.
I remember those.
Yeah, well, we were using that for about a week in 2010. And that's symbolic of what our office was. And it's not to cast aspersions on prior members. It's just they had different focuses and they did other things. I come from a technology business background, so these were some of the things that I looked to do. Also, before I took office, I interviewed several dozen attorneys, find out what they wanted to see out of the office, what was good, what wasn't good, what they wanted, and took their input. We also, very important thing that my first deputy actually had to kind of remind me of, we were using the AS400 system platform that was the end of life. It was no longer eligible for maintenance support. Parts were nearly impossible to find, and it was end of life system. In 2010, as I understand, there were only 2 offices that were using the AS400 system, and that was the Register of Wills and ourselves, if I'm not mistaken. I think court's already gotten off that system, and so had the treasurer's office, and so had the recorder of deeds. Larry Wilker was the IT director, and then Bill Finnerty took over for him after him, which those two gentlemen did kind of take most of this process on when we were first starting. Happy Mark's been a great ally for this project, but at the beginning there were two other gentlemen that were head of the IT, and you might not be aware of that because of your tenure. So case processing time was high because everything was manually entered. Obviously, whenever you're keystroking and manually entering and you don't have selections or drop downs, it leads to errors. Also, cases couldn't be accessed outside without a case number. So what would happen if you wanted to access, you go onto our system, you call the photometry's office, we'd search it internally, give you the case number, then you go remotely. And so you can imagine how many calls we got just asking, what's the case number for Smith versus Smith? It was ridiculous use of customer service time. Well, I get into this a little bit as well. From a system standpoint, again, all case type was manually. Our office was very static. 8 to 4:30 is the only time as an attorney you could do business in our office. If you had a filing deadline, a 30-day deadline, if you didn't get in by 4:30, well, or 4:31, or if it wasn't time stamped in our office by 4:30, then we couldn't process it. So also, our yearly revenue is based basically on the number of files that coincidentally were filed in our office, the number of cases that were filed. We have no way to create revenue. It's basically, we had up years, we had down years, just based on the economy, who filed and didn't. And again, remote case searches weren't possible without a case number. And then if you wanted to search in the courthouse, we had 2 terminals in our office, public terminals you could come out and search for. Right now, currently we have 4. And I'll tell you some of the improvements we made on that as well. This was my goal, this was one of the platforms in my goals when I first took office, is to automate the case processing system. We utilized a lot of different companies to get that. We had bids from Telesoft, IBM, and Paperless Solutions, although Oracle and SAP both, we met with both of them and they provided some input on system requirements. We took a member of the IT staff to the government IT exhibition in December of 2010 to interview some of these candidates. So there was a lot of players involved. At the end of the day, we got two bid. We got 3 quotes. And then when we got those 3 quotes, we went on the road and we went and visited different courthouses in the state of Pennsylvania that were using different systems that we had bids for. And we went to at least 5 or 6 different counties, and they showed us what their system was, how they liked it. And they went and through me, my first and second deputy at the time, all went to do those. So that's how we came up with the system. We did a lot of due diligence, took a lot of time, a lot of research, and at the end we chose Paperless Solutions, not just because of its functionality, but a lot of different features. Again, we couldn't stay on our existing case management system platform. It was end of life, so we had to move it. My goal was, if we're going to move systems, we want to do something that builds for the future and gives us a lot of other functionality and workflow applications as opposed to just 7 clerks sitting at a desk processing cases all day. We wanted to have a little more breadth of functions. There's a lot of different functions that I put on this, and it's also the first page of your list. Again, some of these functions we're utilizing, some of these functions are available for us to use in the future. Some of those, most of which we already have licenses and paid for, some of which would require processing time, so this is not out of the box what we have. This is this possibility of what we can get. One thing though, one feature that's very important, and you're always looking for cost benefit analysis, although again, we had to switch off of our existing system, so we had to switch. But if you wanted to know some data numbers and some numbers we put together when we're choosing systems, the case processing time when the customer e-files versus what it used to be, just sending a case through the mail or over the counter, took about 15 to 20 minutes. The e-filing takes about 90 seconds to process an e-filing, because basically instead of entering a case, you're now more of a verifier, because all the data entry falls on the filing party to do. They upload documents, so you're just verifying they have the right documents, they reference the right case, and everything is logistically correct in the case, so you become the verifier. And just to put that in savings, I took the average cost of what a clerk processes our e-filing. I divided it down by every minute, what it costs per minute to employ that clerk to do tasks. And you take a case processing down 86% in what it costs that clerk to process an e-filing case. So it's pretty significant. Some of the other things, obviously you have an electronic case filing record, so that in disaster recovery or anything like that, you have, your system populates your online, and there's multiple backups of your system, so you're never fully reliant on just having the paper files. Obviously, the access and sharing that we do now, before, again, you had to come to our office to search, unless you had the AS400 access, which most offices didn't. Now, a judge or secretary can sit at her desk, log on to our system. Matter of fact, everybody, every person that would like to, that has a county email that needs to access our system, we can set them up as a user, and they can access our system internally. They can change the system, but they can access cases and files. And you can understand how important it is in domestic relations, for judges, tip staff, for secretaries, and even commissioner staff. You can utilize our system. The system itself is very simple. You can use Google. You can access cases in our system. We designed it that way. The platform itself is very user-friendly, but we did a couple of little quirks and things that I like that made it even more user-friendly. There's also obviously some integrated workflow applications that we're looking at with the court administrator's office and the sheriff. The integrated report system is a great benefit, because before we ask you to go through and tally up and run separate reports for all the case types. The end of every month you get a report from us of a revenue report, and we have to send that to the AOPC as well, the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts. And so all of our reporting, our PFA reports, all those things can now be automated, because it just populates the case information that we put in. Couple other, there's a whole pages and pages of functions, but a couple other little things. If there's a rule change in how we process cases, now we can institute rule changes on an electronic system, whereas before it's all manual. So we'd have to tell all the ladies in office, okay, when we're getting these type of cases, this is what we need to do now. And that was our way. It used to be the way of how we institute changes in processing cases. Now it can be instituted in the system electronically, so the system doesn't allow you to do it in the way that it's not capable. Also, it's easy to use for obviously pro se and e-filers. I think the mission of the county was to make it, make a system that was good for all constituents. If you were a pro se, meaning a person without an attorney who wants to file a case, you can register on our e-filing system and register as a pro se person, which before was impossible. Again, I can drill down any of this that you want. And if any of you would like to see a demonstration of actually being logging in the system and showing you how that works, I'm happy to do that too. I didn't know that this would be that forum to do for deference of time, but I'm happy to do that as well. Some of the statistical numbers, our system's only been up for e-filing for less than a year and a half, so we don't have the volume that we expect to get, which is pretty typical in county institutes e-filing because it's new. But out of the file count, you see on the bottom totals there that there are 598 different transactions that were automated through electronic filing, whether that's new cases or existing cases. The misleading stat on that is under the number of total fees we've collected. It says $4 million. We also collect escrow accounts and holdings accounts, and we had there's two big months there. One was 2.3 million, 1.1 million that we've collected for escrow, so that does kind of skew your filing fee count, but if you take those out of there, so it's pretty representative of the number of, the revenue that we have through filing. That's 2005. 2006, that's a total eye chart, and that's on page 2 of the presentation of your handout that I just gave you. Tells that we're now at 1,673 different filings. Also another opportunity that in the features that I didn't mention is creating revenue. Someone wants to go in and search their case online now, they have the capability to do that, and they can print, download that case, and there's a price per page for them to download that. Before it was free, and it was free because it was worth just about that much. With an increased system and the system being easier to use and find, we have to pay for the maintenance of it, so we charge a fee for the discovery of documents. And again, we're creating revenue and not just reliant on the number of files that we have. And that's the delta of between year after year.
Dave, when did you implement the e-filing?
April of 2015.
Okay, this sheet, it's hard to read.
Yeah, that's why it's in the sheet that I just gave you, the stapled together.
Right, no problem.
Yeah, the better copy is right there.
And the question where it says e-filing total to date 1673, and then counter filing, 83,000. Counter,
That means either mail or people that do it other than electronically.
okay. Is there like a goal in mind to increase the e-filing and decrease counter filing?
There is. For instance, let's just take Montgomery County. Like they've been filing for how many years?
8 or 9.
8 or 9. They're about 50% now. In my head, I would love to see in a couple of years it'd be mandatory to electronic file. It already is at the federal level. I'd love to see it be mandatory to electronically file, so 100% of our cases would be handled electronically, and we could do that. We have the capability to do that now, but obviously you'll get some pushback from the legal community, and President Judge would absolutely have to be involved, and it would be his purview to do that. And that becomes maybe even somewhat of a quasi-political.
So what you're saying is that we, in many respects, still are wedded to paper filing?
We are. Although every file that we get, we now input it onto our system. So technically, our 7 clerks now become independent e-filers, and they input the system that we get in paper. They input it into our electronic filing system and input the data in. So instead of having our clerks do it, I would love to have obviously the filers do it. But yes, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I mean, in the first 14 months, it's not a high percentage of e-filers right now. I do have some ideas and initiatives for marketing in the first quarter next year to really start promoting electronic filing. We kind of needed the 14 months or 15 months to make sure that we're doing it the right way, rather have no breath than bad breath, and we're pretty proficient in what we do now. We've had the system in place, like I said, for about 1.5 years, and so I'm ready to start ramping it up. And again,
Is this a matter of, like you said, you mentioned marketing, is it a matter of promoting it now?
It is. It's sort of like a garage door opener, Jim. When you were young, you were probably the garage door opener. You know, your dad said, get out of the car and open up the garage. But once your dad knew that he could press that button and do it electronically, never went back to sending you out to the garage, out of the car to do it. Well, once people use it, they realize how simple it is and how, But once they realize how easy it is and how simple it is to utilize, it's a no-brainer. But again, it's a paradigm shift. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, there's only a handful of counties in the state of Pennsylvania that can e-file at our level. So it is, I mean, it's a paradigm shift. There's no doubt about that. And Obviously, we're a very senior county, we're a very senior county of, legal community as well, and, so, I am excited, the fact though, that we have, as many judges that are on board with this protocol and want to receive their files electronically now as opposed to case files on their desk. And, so we're moving in the right direction, and the great thing is all the heavy lifting for the infrastructure and the pain points and the headaches have basically been done. Some of the things, again, seeing in the future, we're integrating with potential integration with the corporate courts, which I think you approved in our last meeting. Some great automation with the court administrator's office. That'll help us considerably with reducing all of the paper, and we presented that to you as well. We're looking at an integration with the sheriff. I'm not sure it's cost effective at how it's set up now, but we're continuing to dialogue with that. Again, I talked about mandatory e-filing. I also have a crazy harebrained idea to put electronic filing kiosks in our public libraries. So if some member of the public doesn't have access to a computer, they can e-file and scan documents in a public library.
Well, there'd be in terms of the fee, is it the same amount for e-filing versus paper filing at this point?
It is. It is.
Well,
There's a convenience
would that
fee for the credit, because you have to pay for the credit card, or electronic check, or a debit card. And there are fees that the Value Payments collects from the end user for the access of the credit card.
I was just thinking, if I'm off base, let me know, but I was thinking, so if it supposedly costs us less for the e-filing, would it make sense for us to have a two-tiered fee system where you're charging more for somebody who files paper and charging less for e-filing?
Well,
In other words, that way it would help to incentivize.
Well, that's actually a very astute point. We were just talking about that before the meeting. A lot of counties charge a filing fee to e-file, and to me, I want to make it as easy for them to do this as possible. And obviously, they don't have postage. When they're electronic file something, they could do it sitting in their smoking jacket with a cigar and brandy at 11 o'clock at night from their living room. And so the convenience is one thing, but the cost of postage, the cost of either sending a clerk to actually send it in and walk it in over the counter. There's a lot of convenience to electronic filing, and we purposely did not charge an electronic filing fee because we want to make sure that the cost, it's cheaper to electronically file than it is to file it in the traditional means. It's cheaper because you don't have the costs involved.
So why aren't people using it?
It's just getting the word out, and people like it. It's just a paradigm shift. It's just, people who file at the federal level know electronic filing, and they have no problem using it at all. And maybe Mike's probably a better answer.
That's probably a good question. I mean, most of the attorneys have to file to higher court electronically, so I think it's more a matter of marketing probably and getting out there in front of them. I know that the counties that we have that are a few years ahead of Cumberland with e-filing have visited, start with the big firms and move your way in. Go to the big firms, go to them, train them, show them how to use it, tell them the benefits. I think a lot of it's fun. Personal thing.
Okay, Dave, we're past our time, not your fault. Let the first part of the meeting go too long. Is there any?
The only thing I want to say, and I sent in a separate attachment to the email, it's just the cost, it's what we spent to date, and it includes maintenance fees, modules, production time, the digital system, so you have everything that has been spent on our system today. I thought that was important to have as well. And again, this is continuing dialogue. I'm happy to do demonstrations or anything that you need to fill the disconnect. Because there obviously is a disconnect because we've presented on the system multiple times. I think I've been the subject of 4 records improvement meetings, and I think I did at least 1 or 2 presentations for Larry also. So if there's a disconnect, I'm happy to lend whatever resources needed.
This is good. Larry, any comment?
No, I just advanced it to a blank slide, so you don't see it's still. Do you have a presentation?
I'm using it, yeah.
Now we're done.
I'm gonna stay, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Huh? How am I using it? Oh, want me to stay? No, not necessarily.
Okay, Denny.
Captain Alarms. Okay, our office was very much a beneficiary of Dave's switch. It was through him that I found out about OnBase and found out what they could do for us. Before, I think we started imaging around 2000, 2002, that was before we got the state mandated case management system. So we have a case management system, and we were not doing anything with OnBase or paperless about case management. Ours is strictly a document imaging and document management program. But just to show you the difference, I'm going to go to a case in 2000. We actually went live with this. Yeah, that's right. In October of 2014. So in the old system, this is what we would have had. If we wanted to look up a criminal case, we would go to criminal. I'm going to go to a case in 2014 because it has both the old and the new. Here's a case file for an area getting drunk. You can see up at the top there, there's 107 pages in this file. That might be one document, or it might be 20 documents. And all we got on that was a continuous stream of pages. Here was the end of the one document, and the next document just starts. That document was one page. And the next document, there was no way to go to a particular document without scrolling
You gotta scroll through all of
and
them.
finding what you wanted. This was after my clerks at their case management system docketed all their documents that they had to do that day. Then they would pick up that same pile and they would go to a scanning station and they would call Laserfish and they would have to go into that file and scan everything, find each case, file, and image it in. And like I said, when you were done, you just had one big long stream of images. That is compared to we'll go to the same document. That was 1189 of 2014. Here you see a stream of docket entries. You look under the column that says docket entry. You go down to the bottom, that they're in
chronological order of date filing. This is legacy case. That is what was in the old system. It came forward as one document. You can see again, there's 107 pages. If I scroll down through it, it's the exact same entry, okay? But from that point on in the case, each event that happened, pre-trial conference, defendant's recipe, several orders of court, each entry is a document. So for instance, that one had one page in it. Here's a defendant's motion. This is one document. If you see it has 14 pages in it. Okay? But you only had to go find that one document. If that's what you want to read, you can go right to it. I can get on 30 more. I know we're pressed for time. If you look at all these entries, there are 14 of them that among them contain 203 pages. Rather than having to scroll through all those pages, searching for what you're looking for, if you know that you want the defense motion, you can go right to it and read it. This works very much like a regular file. In fact, it's even better because even a regular file, you have to leaf through the pages. Whereas here, if you know what you're looking for, you can go right to it. That makes it much more usable to other people, especially people in the judicial system and in the criminal justice system, because they can find it easier electronically than they can actually in the paper file. One of those that are open to using electronic at all, which is an issue in our county. But the real savings in this program, the real benefit to my office in this program is that, like I said, whenever in our old system, after they get done doing the case management entry for docketing, they had to pick those same papers up, go to another scanning station, and re-scan, re-handle those papers again doing the scanning. Now, technically, it was possible in that other system to end up with this same kind of indexing here. However, it would have required us to duplicate all of the keystrokes to put this information in up here at the top. With OnBase, with paperless, the way they've set it up, when my clerk now does their case management system docket entry, they put the document in a scanner, push one button, F6, and it creates this index and scans the documents in one step. That is a tremendous savings for the people on my staff. And that's the major reason why we did it. For us, everything that you see has been paid for, both our share of the systems and equipment that we share, the cost of my software to do this, all my maintenance to date, and all of the enhancements that I've ever come to you for to date have been paid for either out of my automation fund or by a grant that was given by the AOPC. We actually got more out of that grant than we were expecting because people didn't take advantage of it and they had money left over and they paid for a bigger portion than I thought they were going to pay for. We also, because of this setup, we will be able to send appeals to the higher courts electronically. One of the things that you approved recently was for paperless to create a program that will create that appeals file that will be able to send to the higher court electronically. And we're also to send documents to the court administrator electronically, which then will be able to be forwarded to the appropriate judge electronically. I don't know if you have any questions about that or not at this point.
This is sort of a point of order. Dan, thank you. David, thank you. In the interest of time, I think I would suggest maybe that the sort of 50-ton elephant in the room is a twofold question. And we have other stakeholders who either could be, are, or might not be integrated into the system. Okay? Clearly, this system within each department has created significant benefits in terms of efficiency. So my question is twofold. Are we getting as much out of OnBase as we potentially could, not within each department, but as the county-wide? And second, if if this is such a great system and has such, which it appears to be, and produce good results, why is there always so much rancor associated with whatever this comes up in records improvement? I think the reason we wanted to get everybody here was to sort of get everybody up to speed to see what OnBase did, but I think that's kind of like the big elephants in the room. And maybe if we could, in a semi-structured fashion, hear from, maybe from our stakeholders. First, I would consider courts, INTO. You guys have anything you want to say? You want to weigh in on this at all? And then also from the sheriff's department, and then finally from Danny and Dave.
From an IMTO perspective, I think the application is great, the tools, the automation is great. My biggest issue is the on-base choice over our existing content management system of Laserfish. Initially it was set up that way, it would integrate, and lo and behold, we decided to switch to on-base. The stuff that Danny talked about initially, the 200-page documents, is really just a process on our part that we failed to do, or could have rescanned things and got them to be effective and efficient within the Laserfish system. Aside from that, you know, the technology, the automation, the integration that Dave and Danny are working on, there are some things on Laserfish that we can do today. Adam just brought up a point to me that juvenile probation was doing something similar to what you said, and the second part of your presentation about automating and populating those fields. So we're doing that with Laserfish. It was never really, I guess, the communication with IMTO and other departments, I think, needs to improve in order to utilize the tools that we have in place.
Melissa?
I think the program is good. Honestly, other than my external inputs into looking into both the systems, I don't deal with it that much, but hopefully that is going to change in the very near future with the integration, so that e-filing can truly be e-filing and we can truly go paperless for the most part. But as yet, I don't have a start date on that. I'm a little impatient to get that going because I'm kind of excited for it. I know it's going to do a lot of good, but
You impatient?
I know, who'd have thought?
Jody?
We don't use OnBase, but what we have been trying to accomplish for just over a year is integrating the sheriff's system. We use Teleosoft, that's a county speed program. Integrate that system with the prothonotary system, so to prevent duplication in data entry. Under the old system, the AS400 system, we shared information, but the new system, paperless, I believe, is in conversation with Teleosoft to resolve that. You're nodding your head yes, so I'm assuming that
I think one of the reasons we wanted to have this was to talk about a unified and integrated strategy on on whatever departments it makes sense within, not only within those who use OnBase or Teleosoft, but our Laserfish, because so that we wind up with, and I know you hate waiting for things, you're an immediate gratification person, but I think some of the rancor, and I'll let David and Danny speak for themselves, is that this has been around, and David's correct, it takes a while for this thing to get some traction. But going forward, I think it would make us feel better, and everybody else feel better, if we had a sort of before-the-fact, multi-departmental cooperation and sort of strategic plan on this. We've got 3 systems that should be, to some extent, compatible, or made compatible, or what have you, and come up with because I think that the benefits are very significant. But let me turn it over to Dave and Danny. You both start with a D, so pick whoever would start.
I don't really have anything to say that I didn't already say at the Revenue Commission, but I repeat myself. I did what the issues are as far as any rankers concerned.
I'll speak frankly and candidly. I totally understand. One of my favorite quotes from a movie is when the Oakland A's, they went to this system where they were doing computerized baseball and everybody was all up in arms because baseball was a traditional thing. You don't play baseball on a computer. the manager of the Boston Red Sox was gonna hire this guy after they went to the division playoffs, the manager that came up with the system. It's like, he says, the first guy through the wall is always bloody. The first guy that tries to do something a little different is always gonna get a little bloody, because people are gonna, it's gonna hard for everybody to conceptualize something, especially a court system here that's been in place since 1750. You know, so it's hard to institute a whole new paradigm thing. And much like Melissa, I'm a little impatient because I come from the private sector where you can move a little quicker with different things and projects and funding and implementation. And from my standpoint, we had an idea, and largely Mark's completely correct. He was very much in favor of using the existing laserfish system. The more I researched what OnBase did, not only in their way that you can access records with optical character recognition, which we didn't have a chance to do it, so you can basically type in a word and it'll find a word within a whole document. But workflow applications as well. Workflow applications with the court administrator, with Denny, and things that OnBase does that far surpasses anything that Laserfish does. And again, our existing Laserfish doesn't do that. We have to buy different licenses and we have to expend costs to get it up to the process where I thought it was even marginally comparative to OnBase. So Mark and I did kind of have a difference of agreement there. And frankly, I thought it was the best solution. I was paying with it out of my automation fund. And so, you know, my idea kind of prevailed, and I respect his input, and his team has been absolutely phenomenal with every step of the way we've done this, and their support is vital. Mark's expertise and George, and but the, do you want to wait till I'm done, or do you want to?
It's fine, take his attention, go ahead.
Okay. I didn't want you to wear out your arm. And then so, but again, this big, great animal that we're trying to change this paradigm shift, and I've told you this in meetings that we had back in 2012, we didn't know what we didn't know. I had a broad stroke of ideas that I wanted to do, and I knew that the system had the capability to do things with the court administrator, had the capability to do with the judges, had the capability to potentially do sheriff service with the sheriff's office. Those are kind of like we're broad range objectives. But my number one objective was to make sure that 7 women in our office could implement the system, and we could have business as usual or business as better as we did before. So our main focus was making sure that the pathonetarius office's needs were met, and we perfected that before we started branching out our tentacles and reaching out to other places. Because again, we didn't want bad breath with, we tried to implement something with the court administrator and the judges, and it didn't work the way we thought it was going to work. And then they're like, oh, that system stinks, we're not going to do it. We didn't want to do that with Denny, and we certainly don't want to do it with the sheriff's office. And so it took us a while. And when we were pretty much dressed up and ready to go and implement our system, then Denny came on board, which I'm glad that they did. But then Denny came on board and said, hey, this is pretty cool. Maybe there's some synergies here. So then that really put what we did back at least 6 months, which is no big deal. It's not a race. It's not a marathon, not a sprint. It's a marathon. We want it to be right. But in difference to the time frame, we kind of did all this process when we got to this one point. Then Denny came on board, and then we kind of waited so that we could both move forward together. And again, it's not a dispersion, it's just a fact. So timeline-wise, I'm sure it was perceived like, oh my gosh, this program's taking forever to implement. And you know what? It took way longer than I would have liked it to take. But above the product, where we are now, it's easy to defend. It's not perfect, and it's not anywhere where I want it to be. But I think, as you can see, the thoughtful process we did just to pick the one system that we did, we've used just a thoughtful process to make sure it implemented as well, and so we don't leave anybody behind. Again, there's things that I would change if I had to go back and project manage the whole thing. But I think that the guile, and I think if that answers your question, I think that's kind of but I love what you're talking about, like to sit down on paper and put together, implement a strategy of things that we wanted to do in the future, and all be on the same page and be researching that, because I think we're at a point now with where our system is and our experience of what we're doing, that's a very appropriate next step.
I just want to say that whatever Dave and I are doing has been no barrier to him doing anything with anybody else, number one. Number two, if you look in our June Revenue Improvement Committee minutes, the question was raised as to whether or not he wanted to go ahead with those projects, and he had to do a cost-benefit study. So I disagreed totally that I was a holder for 6 months. But in any event, as far as what Mark said, I want it to be known that I told Mark and ITO that if they could make Laserfish do a single key scanning and indexing, like we could get from paperless, then I would do it. And they couldn't do it. I also know that Brooks County uses Laserfish, and they went to their supplier, and they couldn't do it. In fact, I know that there's not another supplier in the state that has paperless that provides on base to clerk of course with this kind of capability. That's all I know. And I will say that the grain sharing that we did do for the 2 years would probably not have been possible if we were still back making a two-step process.
So,
And
and again, the 6 months that I'm talking about is at the beginning of our project, not this. And again, I'm not being critical. You must have misunderstood. I wasn't being critical. When we got all of our quotes and our thing, we presented it to the Records Improvement Committee, got our funding, and when we went through our selection process, I'm just saying, when we got to the point, then you came on board initially with this project. That's the point and again, I'm just stating the fact. I get asked questions, why is this taking so long? And again, the commissioners before you two, you had IMTO saying, let's stay with Laserfish because we can do all these great things. And you had this prothonotary that had been in office for 2 years saying, we got to do this on-base thing. And so the commissioners weren't very happy to facilitate the project either. So it was caught up in some of the the metrics with that as well. So again, Denny, it wasn't a criticism. I'm just saying some of the guile or like you said, the challenges is everybody's like, when is this stupid baby going to be born? And I'm trying to explain some of the timeline from my perspective. Again, it's not criticism, it's just my perception and facts.
If I could then wrap this up,
okay, I do have one more thing I want to cover quick.
can you do it really quick?
Yes. I provided you with the paper that talks about the per resident cost of operation of Cumberland County.
Could you
Mr.
explain that?
Herscher raised the question that the Revenue Improvement Committee, the planner, some of these improvements going to show savings for the taxpayer. I think that in his paradigm, he's thinking about actual reductions in staff or whatever. I just want to point out that for the fee-based offices, that's not the only way of looking at it, because the more work that we do, the more fees we collect, and we couldn't not have the same number of people, but we're getting more fees, which is a reduction to the taxpayers of the county. And this shows that 2015, we actually took in 15 cents more per resident than we had spent. In 2014, we cost 15 cents per resident. You go on back in 2006, it was 46 cents. So there's been a steady reduction in the cost per resident for the operation of the clerk of court's office. Then I did an average both ways, both from 2006 forward and then from 2015 back, to show that we were starting at 46 cents after 9 years, 10 years, whatever it is. We're down to 24 cents. And if you go back the other way, last year we were 0, 11 cents, 12 cents, 17 cents. So there are savings from these systems, even though they don't result in a reduction of staff members.
And I've had the same staff for 23 years, same number. And you can't tell me 23 years ago in the process. And we need to have extra judge 23 years ago for the case law.
Commissioners, do you have any further questions?
No, there was too much packed into this meeting for one thing.
Can I?
If we can have another meeting in December with a little bit more specific intent, that might help. The conversation that I hear, maybe 2 or 3 of you need to get together and settle whatever issues you may have. Court administrative offices is on here. Do we need to hear from them?
I was here more in support of the
Okay.
program and our integration into it. So.
All right, very good. Thank you. Is there any other business at this time to be brought in front of the board? Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
To adjourn. Thank you.